He ends up winning the John Cornish Trophy, top Canadian player in NCAA football. He barely beat Eamon Ogbongbemiga at Oklahoma State, and Eamon ends up getting more first place votes. But why was John so special to you as somebody who is consistently watching, observing, analyzing, breaking down all things collegiate football right now with your podcast?
So a couple of things with John Metchie. I think he's well-rounded as a receiver. He can do pretty much anything you want. And that's why I'm like super high on him going into the 2021 season. He's going to be the number one dog on the number one team. So he's going to get a lot of balls. But the reason why he gets so many balls and the reason why he was able to come in and replace a guy who went in the first round or in the first half of the first round in Jalen Waddle last year was he's can beat you over the top on a post, which is great, but he can win on the intermediate. Like I've been starting to call these routes like alpha routes, like X receiver routes. So an in route, an out route, something in intermediate, 10 yards to 20 yards down the field. And he is just snapping off routes so cleanly, beating defenders. His numbers against press coverage, this is like the second thing. His numbers against press coverage were astronomical. Top 5 in yards per route run against press coverage in college football last year. So, I mean, like, what else do you want from a receiver? The first thing we look at is, hey, can you beat press coverage? Well, yeah, he does it at an elite level. And then for me, the next thing is, can you run, like I was saying, can you run these alpha routes? Can you win against man coverage when you can't just run by people? And he can. So I'm super into it. Obviously, I'm a little biased. You love to see the Canadians do well in college football, but I think he has a chance. We had him at number, somewhere in the 10 to 15 range, I believe. Or it might have been number 9, actually, number 10 on our top 10 returning receivers in college football. And my thing with him is don't be surprised if he's in the top 5 by the end of the season. He's going to get all the exposure, and he's just a tremendous player.
You mentioned those alpha routes that you're talking about, being able to just snap off and beat people in a variety of different ways. How would you define his route running style? What is that to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. He's not Michael Thomas in that he's like less, Michael Thomas has this very hard-nosed, deliberate style. He's not Jamar Chase, who just beats you with physicality. He does remind me of some of the other Alabama receivers who played last year without I don't know if he's as like quick twitch as like a Jerry Jeudy, let's say. I'm just naming all the guys he's not like.
No, he's not. It's interesting though, because even like thinking about Devontae Smith, he just floats. Like he looks like his legs aren't moving and he runs away from everybody. It's like, well, Metchie isn't really that because he doesn't float the same way because Devontae's got this incredible, elite, ridiculous speed. But he has this kind of, like you're saying, it's almost like the well-rounded intermediate stuff where he gets in and out of it quickly. But I never really saw him run routes this past year, Seth, where he's like, gets to 18 yards and he's like, bah, 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 like he's not driving it and he's not like chopping in and out like you're saying with the deliberate stuff. It's just like smooth, not crazy fast, but above average speed. And he just kind of like flows is the way that I think of his routes.
Yeah, he just wins, right?
Yeah.
And it certainly helps playing in that offense. Your teams didn't really have a clue of how to play against Alabama last year, pass coverage wise. But I think that I was just so impressed with, like I said, I think of one route where he did that he like beat the drum, as we'd say. But besides that, it was just so clean in and out of the breaks. And with the press stuff, he's not. Again, I go back to Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase would just like beat you up at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. He's not doing that. He's just smoothly finding the angle and bursting off into space when he does. So yeah, he's. I guess it is interesting because you don't look at him and say he has this like one elite thing. even like Jalen Waddle with the speed down the field. That, you know, that's not him. Like I said, not Jamar Chase, not Jerry Jeudy. Like you said, he doesn't float around like Devonta Smith. Well, Devonta Smith floats around because he's being picked up by the wind because he's like 112 pounds. But like, yeah. So it's funny. Like it's hard to he just looks like a good receiver. I know that's like as simplistic as possible.
No, man, that's how I feel too.
Yeah. He's just a good receiver, and I'm super excited for him and going into next season.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about here is that you have got for the Cornish Trophy the last 4 years. It's been Nathan Rourke, quarterback, Chuba Hubbard, running back, now receiver. Aside from defense not getting much love, the production level now in the NCAA of the Canadian guys that you obviously admit have a slight bias towards, but seeing it at skill positions, like seeing Chuba do his thing, and it's like, well, this is a high-level player, but it's not a complete anomaly for him to be able to produce in a major, Power 5 school. And now you see an Alabama receiver, like you say, is going to be the top dog on the team that everybody is still chasing forevermore, seems like. But when you see the way that Metchie fits into that narrative, what do you think of the skill positions right now being produced out of Canadian soil?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're producing athletes who want to play football. And I think about a guy that I wouldn't say I know very well, but I was around, and that's Ben St-Juste, who was just drafted into the NFL. Yep. Went to Michigan, ended up going to Minnesota, and had a great career there. I mean, like, he's a kid who I knew when he was like 17 or 18. He's like, he could have played any sport. He chose to play because he's that type of athlete, and he chose to play football. And I want to believe, like, I don't want to speak for Ontario and BC and the rest of the provinces. I feel like Quebec, you're just seeing the root, the flowers kind of finally blooming from the seeds planted in 1996 when the Alouettes came back, and then a few years later when the Université de Laval became a football program, where you have these role models that you can attain, that you can look up to with the Alouettes, and then you have money, which is Laval and Montreal, and it takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. It's like the Ontario basketball kids. It didn't happen right away when the Toronto Raptors became a franchise. It took 20 years, but now there's Ontario GTA basketball players all over the NCAA. And it's the same with football, I think. Like I said, I can only speak for Quebec, but just people want to play football. It's like something to do here. Like in Quebec City, Laval is a big deal. Yeah. People go watch them play. And Montreal is kind of, it's tough because, Montreal is a big city with a lot of stuff to do, but, the Carabins, they fill out a stadium. So, it just takes time. And I think we're seeing like the fruits of all that labor and money that's been put into the sport. Just high school football here. When I was playing high school football, 35 years ago, like in the mid 2000s, it was like high school football was not a thing. And then, from 2006 on, let's say, the government put money in sports in high school, and one of those sports was football, and you're just seeing the fruits of all that labor, here in 2021.
Yeah, no doubt. It is great stuff. Let people know where they can find your work here, Seth, so that they can reach out and find out everything that you have to think on things outside of the province of Quebec once in a while.
Look, PFF Seth on Twitter, and then if you want to read my work, pff.com, and you want to listen to my work, the PFF College Football Podcast.
There you go. It's always good stuff, man. It's great to catch up with you. And I'm sorry that I made you do this after the Habs lost Game 3.
I didn't know we were going to get into that. Do you have another 25 minutes to talk about?
That's for the other podcast. That's for Seth's burner podcast somewhere in the abyss of podcast land. Thanks, Seth. I'll talk to you soon, man.